Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the window of the Earth Alliance ship Hope. Stars stretched endlessly before him, but his mind focused on one particular system ahead. After 3 months of space travel, they were finally approaching Zephyr Prime, home of the mysterious Zephyrian Empire. "Still can't believe they agreed to meet us," said Commander Lisa Park, joining Marcus at the observation deck. Her voice carried the excitement that everyone on the ship felt. Marcus nodded, adjusting his diplomatic uniform one last time. 20 years of sending messages into space, and they finally responded. All because they intercepted our art broadcasts. The Zephyrian Empire controlled 47 star systems, yet they had never made contact with any other species. Earth scientists had detected their signals for decades, but received no response to any communication attempts. Then 6 months ago, everything changed. The Zephyrians sent a simple message. "Your art interests us. We will meet." "Sir, we're receiving docking instructions," announced pilot Tom Wright from the control station. Marcus felt his heart rate increase. As Earth's lead xenobiologist and cultural attaché, he would be humanity's first voice in this historic meeting. The responsibility weighed heavily on his shoulders. The Hope followed the Zephyrian guidance signals toward a massive space station that looked like a floating crystal palace. Its surfaces reflected starlight in brilliant patterns that seemed to dance and shift. Marcus had never seen anything so beautiful in all his years studying alien architecture. "Their technology is incredible," whispered Dr. Sarah Kim, the team's linguist. "Those crystals aren't just decorative. They're processing massive amounts of data." The docking process took an hour. Every surface the humans could see was made of the same crystalline material, but in different colors and shapes. Some sections pulsed with gentle light while others remained perfectly clear. When the airlock finally opened, Marcus took his first breath of Zephyrian atmosphere. The air was slightly thicker than Earth's, with a sweet scent that reminded him of flowers after rain. 3 Zephyrian figures waited in the docking bay. Marcus tried to hide his surprise at their appearance. They stood about 7 feet tall with smooth, pale blue skin that seemed to shimmer slightly. Their heads were elongated with large eyes that reflected light like mirrors. Each had 4 arms ending in hands with 6 fingers. "Welcome, humans," said the center figure, speaking in perfect English. "I am Ambassador Keldar. Queen Vextara awaits your presence." The walk through the station took 30 minutes. Marcus marveled at everything he saw. Zephyrian art covered the walls, geometric patterns that seemed to move when viewed from different angles. The lighting came from the walls themselves, creating a soft, even glow throughout the corridors. Other Zephyrians moved through the halls, all looking remarkably similar to Ambassador Keldar. Marcus noticed they all had the same pale blue skin, the same body structure, even similar facial features. It was as if they were all variations of the same basic design. "Your people seem very uniform," Marcus observed carefully, not wanting to offend. Ambassador Keldar's large eyes turned toward him. "We value perfection in form. Our society has worked for millennia to achieve the ideal Zephyrian appearance." They entered a massive circular chamber with a high crystal ceiling that showed the stars above. Hundreds of Zephyrians filled curved seating arrangements around the room's edges. At the center stood an elaborate throne made entirely of what appeared to be living crystal that pulsed with internal light. "The Queen approaches," announced Ambassador Keldar. A door opened on the far side of the chamber, and Queen Vextara entered. Marcus felt his breath catch in his throat. The Queen was unlike any of the other Zephyrians he had seen. She stood nearly 8 feet tall, her skin covered in scales that shifted between deep purple and silver as she moved. Instead of the standard 4 arms, she possessed 6, each ending in hands tipped with delicate crystalline claws that caught the light beautifully. Her head was more elongated than the others, and bioluminescent patterns ran along her skull and down her neck, pulsing with soft blue and green light. When she moved, it was with a flowing grace that reminded Marcus of dancers he had seen on Earth. But what struck him most was her voice. When Queen Vextara spoke, her words carried harmonic overtones that created an almost musical quality. It was hauntingly beautiful. "Humans of Earth," she said, her voice filling the chamber. "You have traveled far to reach us. We are curious about your species and your art." Marcus noticed something troubling. As the Queen moved to her throne, the assembled Zephyrians seemed to avoid looking directly at her. Many turned their heads away or focused on points just to her left or right. It was subtle but unmistakable. "Your Majesty," Marcus replied, stepping forward with a formal bow. "I am Dr. Marcus Chen, representing the Earth Alliance. We are honored by your invitation and excited to learn about your remarkable civilization." The formal negotiations began immediately. The Queen outlined the Zephyrian Empire's territory and their technological capabilities. In return, Marcus shared information about Earth's diverse cultures and human achievements in science and art. Throughout the discussions, Marcus found himself genuinely fascinated by Queen Vextara. Her scales reflected the chamber's light in constantly changing patterns. When she gestured with her 6 arms, the movements created an intricate dance that was mesmerizing to watch. The bioluminescent patterns on her head seemed to respond to her emotions, growing brighter during moments of interest and dimming when she was considering complex topics. Dr. Kim leaned over to whisper to Marcus during a break. "Have you noticed how the other Zephyrians react to their queen? They seem almost afraid to look at her," Marcus had noticed. It puzzled him because he found the queen's appearance absolutely striking. Where the other Zephyrians seemed uniform and predictable, she was dynamic and unique. Her harmonic voice was far more interesting than the single-toned speech of the others. The negotiations continued for several hours, covering trade possibilities, cultural exchange programs, and diplomatic protocols. Queen Vextara proved to be highly intelligent and well-informed about galactic politics. As the formal session ended, the Queen announced a recess. "We will continue tomorrow. Tonight you will be our guests in the palace quarters." The assembled Zephyrians began filing out of the chamber, but Marcus noticed that many continued to avoid looking at their queen directly. Ambassador Keldar approached the human delegation. "I will escort you to your quarters," he said. "The queen requests that you dine with her privately this evening." Marcus felt honored by the invitation. Private dining with an alien ruler was an unprecedented opportunity for cultural exchange. The quarters provided for the humans were luxurious beyond anything Marcus had expected. The walls were made of the same crystal material as the rest of the station, but these chambers had been configured to mimic Earth-like environments. The lighting was adjusted to match Earth's sun, and the furniture had been designed to accommodate human physiology. "They've really done their research on us," noted Commander Park as she examined the sleeping arrangements. That evening, Marcus was escorted to the Queen's private dining chamber. It was a smaller, more intimate space than the throne room, with walls that displayed slowly shifting patterns of color and light. Queen Vextara was already seated at a table that seemed to be grown from living crystal. She had changed from her formal robes into something that appeared more comfortable, but no less magnificent. The bioluminescent patterns on her head pulsed in a steady, calming rhythm. "Please sit," she said, gesturing to a chair that had been specially modified for human proportions. The meal consisted of various Zephyrian delicacies that had been carefully prepared to be safe for human consumption. The flavors were unlike anything Marcus had ever experienced, complex combinations that seemed to change as he ate them. "Your people's art intrigues us greatly," the Queen said as they dined. "We detected your broadcasts showing paintings, music, sculpture. Such diversity and expression is foreign to our culture." "How so, Your Majesty?" Marcus asked, genuinely curious. The Queen's patterns dimmed slightly. "Zephyrian art has followed the same principles for thousands of years. We create what is perfect, what matches our ideal of beauty and form. Variation is considered error." Marcus thought about this. "On Earth, we believe that variation is what makes art beautiful. No two humans see the world exactly the same way, so no two artists create exactly the same art." "A fascinating concept," the Queen replied, but her tone suggested she found it difficult to understand. As the evening progressed, Marcus found himself increasingly comfortable in the Queen's presence. Her intelligence was obvious, but there was something else, a sadness that seemed to lurk beneath her regal bearing. When the meal concluded, the Queen rose to escort Marcus to the chamber's balcony, which offered a spectacular view of the star field beyond the station. "Your people," she said quietly. "Do they all look similar to you?" Marcus smiled. "Not at all, Your Majesty. Humans come in many different appearances, different skin colors, heights, facial features. We're probably one of the most physically diverse species in our region of space." The Queen's bioluminescent patterns flickered in what Marcus was beginning to recognize as surprise. "And you consider this desirable?" "Absolutely. Our diversity is one of our greatest strengths. It means we approach problems from many different angles and create art that reflects many different perspectives. Queen Vextara was quiet for a long moment, staring out at the stars. Marcus sensed she wanted to say something but was struggling with how to express it. Finally, she turned toward him, her large eyes reflecting the starlight. "Dr. Chen, I must ask you something, and I require complete honesty." "Of course, Your Majesty." The Queen moved closer, and Marcus could see the incredible detail in her scales, the way the bioluminescent patterns branched like neural networks across her skull. When she spoke, her voice was barely above a whisper, but the harmonic quality made it carry clearly. "I know I am hideous, human. I have seen how my own people cannot bear to look upon me directly, but you stare at me constantly during our meetings. Why do you do this? Are you documenting my grotesque form for your species to study?" Marcus felt his heart sink as he realized what the Queen was saying. The avoidance behavior he had observed from the other Zephyrians wasn't respect. It was revulsion. This magnificent being believed herself to be a monster. He looked at her directly, taking in her iridescent scales that shifted color like living jewels, her graceful movements, the fascinating patterns of light that played across her features. When he spoke, his voice was filled with genuine warmth and his smile was completely sincere. "Hideous, Your Majesty, you're absolutely gorgeous." The Queen's bioluminescent patterns flickered rapidly like a computer processing unexpected data. She stared at Marcus for a long moment, searching his face for any sign of deception or mockery. "You speak truly," she whispered, more to herself than to him. Marcus nodded, his smile never wavering. "I've been staring because I find you beautiful, Your Majesty. Your scales catch light in ways I've never seen before. Your movements have an elegance that's mesmerizing. Even your voice creates music when you speak. I've been trying to understand why your people don't seem to appreciate what I see as obvious beauty." Queen Vextara took a step back, her patterns now flashing in rapid sequences of blue and gold. "This is impossible. I am a genetic deviation, a necessary monster who rules because my people believe my cursed form grants power." "Cursed?" Marcus shook his head. "Your Majesty, on Earth we would call you a work of art." The Queen turned away from him, her 6 arms wrapped around herself as if trying to hide. "You do not understand our ways, human. I am what I am because our society needed a ruler who embodied difference, who could bear the burden of being other." Marcus felt a deep sadness for this incredible being who had been made to believe her uniqueness was a flaw. "Your Majesty, may I tell you something about human culture?" She nodded without turning around. "We have a saying, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. But more than that, we've learned that the most memorable beauty often comes from what makes someone different, not what makes them the same as everyone else." Queen Vextara remained still for a long moment. When she finally turned back to face Marcus, her bioluminescent patterns had settled into a steady, thoughtful glow. "Your words confuse me, Dr. Chen, but they also intrigue me. Perhaps tomorrow we can speak more of these human concepts of beauty and difference." Marcus bowed respectfully. "I would be honored, Your Majesty." As he was escorted back to his quarters, Marcus couldn't stop thinking about the Queen's revelation. Here was a being of extraordinary beauty who had been convinced she was hideous. It made him wonder what other misconceptions might exist between their species, and what opportunities for understanding they might discover in the days to come. The stars continued to shine through the crystal walls of the station as Marcus prepared for sleep, but his mind was already working on how he might help the Queen see herself the way he saw her, as something truly magnificent. Queen Vextara could not sleep that night. She paced through her private chambers, her 6 arms moving restlessly as her mind replayed Dr. Chen's words over and over. No one had ever called her beautiful before. The very idea seemed impossible. The Queen's chambers were larger than any other space on the station, but she felt trapped within them. The walls displayed her favorite patterns, geometric designs that helped calm her thoughts. But tonight, even these familiar shapes brought no peace. She moved to a hidden panel in the far wall and pressed her palm against it. The crystal surface recognized her touch and slid away, revealing a secret room that no other Zephyrian had ever seen. Inside, the walls were covered with her own creations. Unlike the perfect geometric patterns that decorated the rest of Zephyrian society, these artworks were wild and organic, flowing designs inspired by the patterns of her own bioluminescent displays. sculptures that mimicked the way her scales caught and reflected light, paintings that captured the harmonic frequencies of her voice in visual form. Queen Vexitara had been creating these works in secret for decades, never daring to show them to anyone. In Zephyrian culture, art was meant to reflect perfection and uniformity. Her creations were the opposite, chaotic, emotional, and deeply personal. She picked up one of her sculptures, a crystalline form that spiraled and twisted like frozen music. The shape had come to her during a particularly lonely night, when the weight of ruling as an outsider had felt overwhelming. She had poured her feelings into the crystal, letting it grow according to her emotions rather than any predetermined plan. "Gorgeous," she whispered, repeating Dr. Chen's word. Could it be possible that her differences, the very things that made her people uncomfortable, could actually be beautiful to someone? Meanwhile, in his guest quarters, Marcus was also awake. He sat by the crystal window, looking out at the star field and thinking about his conversation with the Queen. The sadness in her voice when she called herself Hideous had touched him deeply. Marcus had spent his career studying alien cultures, but he had never encountered a situation quite like this. Here was an entire civilization that had apparently convinced their most unique individual that she was monstrous. It went against everything he believed about the value of diversity. He thought about Earth's history, how different human cultures had celebrated various forms of beauty. The elaborate body modifications of some African tribes, the intricate tattoos of Polynesian islanders, the diverse art styles that had emerged from different regions and time periods. Humanity's strength had always come from embracing differences, not suppressing them. The next morning, the formal negotiations resumed. Marcus noticed that Queen Vexitara seemed different, more thoughtful, perhaps even nervous. Her bioluminescent patterns flickered more frequently, and she asked more questions about human culture than she had the previous day. "Dr. Chen," she said during a break in the discussions, "you spoke last night of diversity in human art. Could you show us examples?" Marcus had hoped for exactly this request. He activated his portable display unit and began showing images from Earth. Paintings from every continent and time period, sculptures in countless different styles, photographs of natural phenomena that humans found beautiful. The assembled Zephyrians watched with obvious fascination. Many of them had never seen such variety in artistic expression. Their own culture had produced the same basic artistic forms for thousands of years. "This painting," Queen Vexitara said, pointing to an abstract work filled with swirling colors, "it has no recognizable form. How can your people find meaning in such chaos?" Marcus smiled. "That's exactly the point, Your Majesty. The artist wanted to express emotions and ideas that couldn't be captured in realistic forms. The beauty comes from the feelings it creates in the viewer, not from whether it looks like something specific." He showed them images of Aurora Borealis, its sheets of colored light dancing across polar skies. "We find this beautiful even though it serves no practical purpose. The patterns change constantly and never repeat exactly." Queen Vexitara's patterns brightened noticeably. "The lights move like living things." "Exactly. And no two displays are ever identical. That's part of what makes them special." After the formal session ended, Queen Vexitara requested another private meeting with Marcus. This time she led him to a different location, a smaller chamber he had not seen before. "Dr. Chen," she began, her voice carrying a tremor of uncertainty, "what I am about to show you must remain secret until I decide otherwise. Do you agree?" Marcus nodded. "Of course, Your Majesty." The Queen activated the hidden panel, revealing her secret art room. Marcus stepped inside and felt his breath catch. The chamber was filled with the most extraordinary artistic creations he had ever seen. The sculptures seemed to capture movement in solid form, their twisted surfaces reflecting light in constantly changing patterns. The paintings pulsed with color and energy, created using pigments that responded to electromagnetic fields. Wall-mounted displays showed visual representations of the Queen's harmonic vocalizations, turning her voice into flowing rivers of light. "Your Majesty," Marcus whispered, walking slowly through the collection, "these are incredible. This is the most original alien art I've ever encountered." Queen Vexitara's patterns flickered with uncertainty. "You truly find them pleasing?" "They follow none of our traditional forms. They are chaotic, emotional, imperfect." Marcus turned to face her directly. They're beautiful precisely because they're different. This sculpture here, it looks like it's dancing even though it's completely still. And this painting captures something I've never seen before, like looking at pure emotion. He paused in front of a large crystal formation that seemed to grow directly from the wall. Its structure was incredibly complex, with internal chambers that created different harmonic frequencies when air moved through them. This one, he said, pointing to the crystal. It's like a visual representation of your voice. The way the chambers connect and flow, it's architectural music. Queen Vextara moved to stand beside him. I created that during my first year as ruler. I felt so isolated, unable to connect with my people. I wanted to make something that captured how my voice sounded to me. Not the monster's roar my people heard, but the music I felt inside. Marcus studied her face, seeing the vulnerability beneath her regal bearing. Your Majesty, what if your people could see these creations? What if they could understand that being different isn't a curse but a gift? The Queen's patterns dimmed. Impossible. They would be horrified. These works violate everything our culture values. Or, Marcus suggested gently, they might discover something they never knew they were missing. Over the next several days, Marcus continued to visit the Queen's secret art room. He learned about her childhood, how she had been identified as a genetic variant at birth and raised specifically to become ruler. In Zephyrian tradition, such variants appeared rarely and were believed to possess special powers that made them suitable for leadership. I was taught that my appearance was necessary but regrettable, she explained. As they examined one of her earlier works, the power to rule required the burden of being visually offensive to my people. Marcus shook his head. What if that tradition is based on a misunderstanding? What if the real power comes not from being offensive but from being unique? He shared more examples from human history. Leaders who had succeeded precisely because they thought differently from others. Artists who had revolutionized their fields by breaking traditional rules. Scientists who had made breakthrough discoveries by approaching problems from new angles. On Earth, Marcus explained, we've learned that homogeneity leads to stagnation. When everyone thinks the same way and values the same things, progress stops. It's the outliers, the different ones, who push civilization forward. Queen Vextara listened intently to these stories. Gradually, Marcus began to see changes in her behavior. Her posture became more confident. Her bioluminescent patterns stayed brighter for longer periods. Most importantly, she began to speak about her art with pride rather than shame. This piece, she said one afternoon, showing Marcus a new sculpture she had completed, represents the harmony I hear when my voice joins with the station's resonance frequencies. I used to think it was discordant, but now I realize it creates entirely new musical possibilities. Marcus smiled, recognizing the shift in her perspective. It's magnificent, Your Majesty. Have you considered that your people might be ready to hear new musical possibilities? The turning point came when Ambassador Keldar requested a private audience with the Queen. Marcus was not present, but Queen Vextara told him about the conversation later. He asked me about the changes he has observed in my behavior, she said. He wanted to know if the humans had somehow altered my thinking. What did you tell him? I told him the truth, that you had shown me a different way of seeing myself and my role as leader. I asked him a question that surprised us both. I asked him what he thought about art that broke traditional rules. Ambassador Keldar, it turned out, had been secretly dissatisfied with Zephyrian artistic stagnation for years. Like many of his generation, he appreciated their cultural achievements but wondered why no new forms had emerged in centuries. He admitted that he sometimes felt bored by the predictability of our art. Queen Vextara continued. When I described some of the human examples you had shown me, he became very interested. This conversation gave the Queen an idea. What if she could introduce new artistic concepts gradually, without immediately revealing her own hidden works? She arranged for Marcus to give a presentation about human art to a select group of Zephyrian cultural leaders. The response was more positive than anyone had expected. Many of the attendees expressed fascination with the diversity of human creative expression. The concept of individual artistic vision is intriguing, commented one of the cultural ministers. We have focused so long on collective ideals that we may have overlooked individual contributions. After the presentation, several Zephyrians approached Marcus privately with questions about specific artworks they had seen. A few even asked whether it might be possible to experiment with similar approaches in their own culture. Queen Vexitara realized that her people were ready for change. They had simply never been given permission to explore it. She made her decision during a quiet evening in her art room, with Marcus helping her organize her collection. "I want to show them," she said suddenly. "I want to share my work with our cultural council." Marcus felt a surge of excitement mixed with concern. "Are you sure, Your Majesty? Once you reveal these pieces, there's no going back." The Queen's patterns blazed with new confidence. "That is exactly why I must do this. I have spent my entire reign hiding my true self from my people. Perhaps it is time they saw their queen as she really is." The presentation was scheduled for the following week. Queen Vexitara selected a dozen of her best pieces, representing different periods and emotional states. Marcus helped her prepare explanations for each work, describing the feelings and experiences that had inspired them. On the day of the presentation, the main cultural chamber was filled with Zephyrian artists, scholars, and government officials. Marcus sat with the human delegation, watching nervously as Queen Vexitara took her place at the center of the room. "My people," she began, her harmonic voice carrying clearly throughout the chamber. "For too long I have hidden a part of myself from you. Today I share with you creations that represent my true thoughts and feelings as your ruler." She unveiled the first piece, a sculpture that captured the isolation she had felt during her early years as queen. The crystal formation twisted upward in a spiral that seemed to reach desperately toward light. The chamber fell completely silent. Marcus could see the Zephyrian studying the piece with expressions he had never seen before. Surprise, confusion, but also unmistakable interest. Queen Vexitara moved to the next piece, a painting that visualized the harmonics of her voice. The colors flowed and merged in patterns that seemed to sing even without sound. "This represents how I experience my own voice," she explained. "Not as the harsh sounds you hear, but as the music I feel within myself." As she continued through the collection, Marcus watched the audience's reaction change. The initial shock gave way to fascination. Several Zephyrians moved closer to examine the details of each piece. Others began whispering excitedly among themselves. When Queen Vexitara finished her presentation, the chamber remained silent for a long moment. Then slowly, one of the cultural ministers began to speak. "Your Majesty," he said, his voice filled with wonder, "these works express concepts we have never considered. The emotional depth, the personal vision. They show us possibilities we did not know existed." Another council member stepped forward. "The sculpture of isolation. It captures feelings I have experienced but never seen represented in our art. How did you know to express such things?" Queen Vexitara's patterns glowed with growing confidence. "Because I allowed myself to create from my true experience rather than from our cultural expectations. These pieces represent what it means to be different in a society that values uniformity." The questions and discussions that followed lasted for hours. Marcus watched with amazement as the Zephyrian cultural leaders grappled with entirely new concepts about art and individual expression. Most surprisingly, several of them revealed that they too had secretly created works that deviated from traditional forms. The Queen's courage in sharing her art had given them permission to acknowledge their own suppressed creativity. "Perhaps," suggested Ambassador Keldar, "we have been so focused on perfection that we forgot the value of exploration." The cultural revolution that followed happened faster than anyone had expected. Within weeks of the Queen's presentation, Zephyrian artists throughout the empire began experimenting with new forms. Art galleries that had displayed the same basic patterns for centuries suddenly featured works of stunning originality. Marcus and his team found themselves invited to cultural events throughout the Zephyrian territories, sharing human perspectives on creativity and diversity. The exchange flowed both ways, with Zephyrian innovations in harmonic art and crystal growing techniques, fascinating human artists back on Earth. Queen Vexitara became the symbol of this artistic renaissance. Her unique appearance, once seen as a necessary burden, was now celebrated as the physical manifestation of creative possibility. Young Zephyrians who showed variations from the standard form were no longer hidden away but encouraged to explore their differences. "You have given me the greatest gift possible," the Queen told Marcus during their final private meeting before the human delegation's departure. "You help me see myself as I truly am, rather than as I was taught to believe." Marcus smiled the same warm smile that had started their friendship. You already were who you truly are, Your Majesty. I just helped you recognize it. The farewell ceremony took place in the main chamber where they had first met. But now the walls displayed a mixture of traditional Zephyrian patterns and the new artistic forms that had emerged from the cultural exchange. Queen Vextara's own pieces held places of honor throughout the room. As Marcus prepared to board the Hope for the journey back to Earth, Queen Vextara approached him one final time. Her bioluminescent patterns now blazed with confident beauty, and she moved with the grace of someone who knew her own worth. "Dr. Chen," she said, her harmonic voice creating music that filled the entire docking bay. "When you return to your people, tell them this. The Zephyrian Empire owes humanity a debt that can never be repaid. You showed us that our greatest strength was the very thing we thought was our greatest weakness." Marcus bowed respectfully. "Your Majesty, the debt goes both ways. Your people have shown us new forms of beauty we never imagined possible." As the Hope departed from the Crystal Station, Marcus looked back through the observation windows. The station's surfaces now displayed patterns that combined traditional Zephyrian geometry with the flowing, organic forms inspired by Queen Vexitara's art. The Queen stood on the main viewing platform, her 6 arms raised in farewell, her scales catching starlight like living jewels. She was no longer the isolated ruler who believed herself hideous, but a confident leader who had sparked a renaissance of creativity throughout her empire. Marcus smiled as he watched her figure grow smaller in the distance. Sometimes, he reflected, the most important diplomatic achievements came not from treaties or trade agreements, but from helping someone see their own beauty for the first time. The stars stretched endlessly ahead as the Hope began its journey home, carrying news of a successful first contact that had changed 2 civilizations forever.